In a vast wasteland of entertainment where radio has become obsolete, stands an embittered man teetering at the edge of sanity. With help from radio friends, he's about to embark on a global mission that would change the course of history as we know it. Broadcasting live from the secret studios on the banks of the Brandywine River in Delaware is Mitchell K.C. Hill. And up to the Great White North in Vancouver is Alexander Knight.
Hey everybody, we're up to show number 18. Can you believe it? And I'm also the guy that's teetering on the edge of sanity. I always like that, describing what I'm in radio, what I'm teetering on. I'm sort of like, remember Weebles Wobble, but they don't fall down? Again, another old guy reference. What can I say? My name is Mitchell K.C. Hill. That was the name I used when I used to be on the radio at one time. And the other guy that's here is my co-pilot and tech expert, is the guy you see squished in next to me on the screen there, Mr. Alexander Knight.
Good to be here, Mitch, and I'm happy to see everybody here today. The best way you can join our community is going to the QR code that you see on the screen now. That will let you into Discord, which you can continue the conversation after the show is done. Let us know what you like, what you don't like about the show, maybe suggest some guests that you want to see on the program in the future. But for now, I'll throw it back to Mitch because we got a great guest today.
Yeah, what happened to the hair before we move on too far? Something happened to your head.
You had to ask about that. What happened to it? Well, the razor slipped in the shower and it just came right off.
Okay.
I just decided to do something different. It was it's time. It's the summer. It's hot, and I decided to shave my head and shave my beard. So that's where we're at right now.
You're most streamlined, as they like to say. Well, this is a great show, and I've been trying to get this gentleman on for a while because he's somebody that I grew up with locally. We got into radio almost at the exact same time, but didn't really work together until the 90s. And his name is Mike Rossi. He has an alter ego, but I'll let him tell you what that is. And Mike has worked synonymously with Wilmington Radio for quite a few years. So without further ado, as they like to say, Mr. Mike Rossi, my good friend, radio consultant, programmer, on air, and now a real estate agent, too. Mike, why don't you tell us what you're doing these days?
Well, thanks, Mitch. Sure. Consultant? Boy, I'll take that in a minute. Sure. Not doing that right at the moment, but I am doing a couple of different things. First of all, I am a licensed realtor here in the state of Delaware, and I work for Patterson Schwartz Realtors in the Greenville office. So, sure. Give me a call for all your real estate needs at 302-373-2880. It's been interesting 3 years of managing a new real estate career, but I've also done some part-time work as a contractor over the last few years, most notably with WJBR. I was their midday voice tracker, a midday personality, and did that from July of 2021 right through the time that they signed off in August. Was it August? October, excuse me. October of last year. At the moment, I'm helping our good friend Pete Booker. I am the morning news presenter for Delaware Public Media, which is WDDE in Dover at 91.1, and also simulcast on McCain High School's 88.1. So that's Delaware Public Media, an affiliate of the National Public Radio Network. And I've done that for a week, and that's interesting. I'm back waking up very early in the morning and getting into a studio at 4:30 and plugging in the headphones again. It's great.
And you have this distinction, I always thought I had it, but I don't, of being the most recognized radio voice from this, and maybe a little bit of last century, the most recognized radio voice on the air in northern Delaware. So congratulations.
Thanks. I don't know if that's entirely true. I mean, I wasn't a drive time jock like a lot of people were that, had a few more ears. But I've had a few years, that's for sure, in that I had a run of full-time as midday on WSCW for some 29 years, from 1992 to the end of 2020.
And that's a really interesting air shift, because back in the early days of radio, and I'll say maybe 20, 30 years ago, the main shifts were the drive shifts when people were driving their car to and from work. That would have been morning drive, which I've had the pleasure of doing for a while, and the afternoon drive, which I also had the pleasure of doing at one time or another. But what's happened over the years of radio changing and morphing and becoming more and less relevant to certain things, middays became the thing. And you commandeered middays at WSTW quite well for so long. But you did a show, you did a lunchtime show, and you were probably the radio voice that people would listen to in their office. That was a thing that kind of grew out of nowhere, listening at work, and that became very popular. How did that kind of transition for you?
Well, I think as people in the radio business came to appreciate how you could really crank up the number of quarter-hour listening by having a good at-work contingent to your audience, we did everything that we could to maximize that. I was lucky enough to have been handed a tremendous benchmark on WSTW, which was the all-request lunch hour. And I took that and ran with it. I was nervous as could be when I first picked it up, but carried on the tradition of my predecessor, Dave Fleetwood, and developed a couple of different wrinkles along the way. One game that was called Rossi's Random Riffs, which was fun. Just playing a little clip of music and asking people to identify it and call it and win a prize.
What was the thing where people would remember a song but with the wrong lyrics, like "Tears in My Coffee," which was "You're So Vain," or "Chromosomes" by Paul Simon, which was Kodachrome. Wasn't there a name for that? Because I remember doing that for a while. That was kind of like got people's attention.
Sure, misheard lyrics is always a great conversation piece. Dave had introduced a song, Dave Fleetwood, rather a contest called Lyrics on the Loose, which was, just plucking a few lines out of a song, reading them on the air and saying, what's the name of that song? Who does it? Most of this predates computers and Googling and Shazam and all of that, so we could play those kind of games back then. But between Lyrics on the Loose and Rossi's Random Riff, we had a fun contest each and every day, which seemed to be pretty sticky and seemed to be very effective.
Well, kudos to your creativity by adding those things that allowed listeners to participate very interactively before we had the internet and things like that. It seemed that you got people involved, and that's something that radio probably still needs to do more of, is to find ways to engage and involve the listeners whenever you can. And now you've got that great big internet out there. How did you, towards the end of your radio career at WJBR, integrate with the internet? How did you use that to sort of bring the listeners in? Because we used to use a request line. That was the only thing we had back in the day. See if you remember this number, 764-5300. Does that number...
764-5300. I think
that was the old WAMS request line. I'll always forget it until the day I die.
All right.
So how did you hold it? How did you hold all that together with the internet creeping up on us?
Well, there were a number of things. Excuse my my clock, which is running late. But anyway, there were a couple of things that were beginning to indicate that the phone numbers, like 478-1010, which was the WSTW and still is the WSTW request line, was being used less and less, especially on the request show. I would open up a Facebook page and make an entry every day soliciting requests there. And of course, as we added at that point Twitter and some other social media platforms, chances for people to make their requests that way. Also, texting and requests became popular as well, which wasn't quite as much fun because, it's great to have a listener's voice on the air. And that's one of the things that I do miss, is the fact that people choose to communicate on these other devices and less on their phone, and that lessens the opportunity for entertaining audio on the air.
Sure, and pardon the random nature of these questions, but I'm fascinated with being able to talk to somebody that has a radio career that spans what, 40, 50 years? Could I say that?
I'm afraid you
That
can.
is a compliment. That's not a insult to you.
Well, thanks. Yep. My first broadcast, and by the way, if you get a chance, maybe I should post it somewhere, but if you get a chance, whether it be on my Facebook page or my LinkedIn page, I did a video recording of my last break on WJBR.
Nice.
It was
That was very classy, by the way.
Thank you. It was my opportunity to sign off a radio station, something I had never done before. The idea that a set of call letters was going away and a music venue and a local community servant in this particular radio station channel was going away and being replaced by a nationally syndicated program was a unique opportunity. And also, given where I've been in my career and where things seemed to be headed, it looked like it was going to be my last live break on the radio at that point. So
it was very nicely done, and it somehow I heard American Pie playing in the background of my head while you were doing it. It was a soliloquy about an ode to broadcasting and its inevitable change from one thing to another. Since we're on the subject of change, you were in radio back when we used to play. You span the globe in many ways. You're like the wide world of radio. You span the globe because you were a guy that played records and cart machines, and it was a very active, as we've talked about before. Kirk Harnack talked about this last week. The way radio used to be is that you were constantly doing things. Your hands were always in motion because every single thing, every element that played on the air had to be cued and played and set up by the disc jockey, and you went through that process into the great world of computers, into the point where you're now sitting in front of your remote voice tracking studio right there in your own home. Mm-hmm. How was that to go through all of those changes?
Well, you roll with the punches, Mitch, I think is what you have to do. In terms of voice tracking, I see the efficiencies. I understand what that's all about.
Why don't we explain what voice tracking is for those that don't know it?
Sure. Voice tracking, the way I did most of my shifts on WJBR in those last 2.5 years I was on the air there, was sitting down with the program log in front of me, actually with files that had the songs in them. And there were chances to plug in and record breaks that were of appropriate length and of appropriate content for what the company was hoping for. And hopefully a little local quality and local flavor to it, and do it with just a dry recording of your voice that would then be plugged in the context of the program, whether it be over the intro of a song or whether it be coming out of the back end of a song or over a music bed. All of those things were available to us, and it was just a question of taking part A and putting it over top bed B and then saving it to the computer. And it was amazing in that you could very accurately place a voice track where you needed it to be, as opposed to the absolutely amazing talent of being able to time that all out in the moment while you're on the air.
Yeah, and there wasn't a do-over. When you're on the air and you open that mic and you said something, you can't take it back. It was happening in real time.
And I see that.
You're right.
Yeah, I see that now even with people who have the opportunity to voice track something, and then they're trying and they retake and they have to edit or something or another, and then they say, "Uh-oh, I got to go live and do the break," and they'll go on the air and do it spectacularly well. It's just that idea that microphone is attached to a transmitter and is going out in real time that pumps up the juice a little more than the voice tracking.
And you know, it's true because, well, I have the advantage of being a gearhead, and I've always been into technical stuff. I'm sitting literally in a studio, and it's all digital, and it's got all the latest gazintas and gazaltas everywhere. If it hadn't been for that, this room would be an Amish nightmare because with all due respect to our Amish viewers, which I'm sure there's lots of them, it was always complicated to deal with computers versus, you know, cart machines and records and things like that. And interesting, I just had a recent opportunity to apply for a job, which didn't work out. But it was a thing where the gentleman told me, well, it's for a top 75 market. And I'm like, well, where? And he said, I can't really tell you yet. If you get the job, I'll tell you. And I said, well, you know, I've been living here in Delaware for so long. I got a beautiful home, a nice studio. I don't want to go move to, you know, Lickskillet, Alabama to do the evening radio show. He said, no, that's not how it's done. It's done with voice tracking. And as Mike just described, you can sit in front of a computer, and what used to take 4 hours of real time could be done in a half an hour. Because you're doing the intros and the outros and such. But there is something missing from that. And the part that's missing, the exact same thing you said, that little bit of Twitter or fizzing that you get inside of you when you know you're going out to thousands, maybe millions of people. And it just keeps you on a certain edge. And I recall when I came back and went on the air doing mornings at your radio station, WSTW, that it kept me really on the edge of my game. And I would say that 90% of the time I was clever and said fun stuff, and 10% of the time I was a complete and total disaster. But you can't take it back. So that was the interesting part.
Good for you for keeping it down to 10%, Mitch. I wish I could say the same. And by the way, one of the things of voice tracking that is very important too, especially when you're doing it remotely, is I'm sorry, Mitch, but it's actually Lickskillet, Alabama. So
sorry about that.
Right.
As opposed to Frogsdick, Alabama.
It's just one of those things where, you know, you have that learning curve about all the little local nuances that you got to get right. You have to get right.
Yeah, it's funny because as the radio business is very transient, which means that DJs for hire come and go, and they come and go from all parts of the country, maybe even parts of the world. And I pity the people that come in from somewhere out in the Midwest to come into Philadelphia and start trying to pronounce things like Schuylkill or Wissahickon or Wawa or, you know, whatever. There's all kinds of little isms for certain areas that you have to immediately absorb, and you can spot a rookie a mile away to the time. So I'm always saying that, you know, there's advantage of hiring me into a market that I'm familiar with. When I went from working at WAMS here in Wilmington to WFIL in Philadelphia, Jay Cook, God bless him, one of the greatest programmers of all time, said to me, you know, the really weird thing about me hiring you and you coming on board, I was all of about 19 years old. He said, you sound like you've been on this station forever. And I said, because I played like I was on your station. I'd lived under the umbrella of WFIL, so I had a chance to listen to it. And, of course, back in those days, and you probably remember, Mike, is that we could hear big radio stations all over the country, maybe even the world, via AM skip and things like that. It's not like that so much today, but you can't on the internet. But back then, we would live vicariously by what was going on at Big Ron on WCFL or WOWO in Fort Wayne or CKLW or WKBW, all these big high-powered stations. So you had a chance. It was the original social media, I guess, for us radio guys to be able to enjoy that. But I kudos to you, as I said, for you to have made that transition from the way it used to be to the way it is. And this is one of the reasons why Alex is here, because I am the last angry DJ, but Alex is also the millennial-esque person that keeps me in touch with the social norms of today, so that when I step out and say the wrong pronoun or I do something wrong, Alex is quick to correct me. Are you not, Alex?
Well, I don't know. I'm not the
hairpin.
police here. I mean, I don't. Have I really corrected you that much? No, that doesn't make for an interesting show, I don't think. If I was just gonna, to me, it just feels like talking down to somebody. You know, it's not unless you said something really egregious.
Well, everything I say is pretty egregious. Thank you for using that word, by the way. I just love it. But I think that's part of the spice that makes this show great is that, by the way, Alex, you're welcome to say anything you want about me. I got thick skin after all these years. By the way, I'm going to be 70 tomorrow. It's a shocking. Yeah, I never thought I'd make it to 40, much less 70. And can I still do radio at the age of 70? That's, Mike, you've got programming background. Where would I fit in today's world?
Well, I made a comment on a post a couple of weeks ago that my hope is that, yes, this generation that you and I are part of still love radio, still love listening to the radio, still love the music that we remember, plus music into the 80s and 90s as well. And we're probably as well off or better than any previous generation, certainly in terms of health overall, and perhaps in wealth. And I just saw an article today about how boomers are spending money and they should be advertised to and all that sort of thing. So with that in mind, yes, there probably should be audio products that are designed for, you know, people in our demographic and people that are in that demographic would love to hear hosts that are of that demographic, I believe. Therefore, I think that there are, you know, possibilities for opportunities for those of us who want to stay in the game.
Well, it was funny. You said a couple of weeks ago, there's a job that somebody's looking for somebody to do. And they were looking to bring back the sound of WFIL around the era of Banana Joe and George Michael. And I'm looking at it, and Mike sent me a note, said, this job's got your name all over it. You should check it in, which I did. But the weird thing was finding out that I couldn't send a current air check because WFIL doesn't sound like WFIL did 45 years ago. So I had a talk with the programmer, whose name I won't mention just yet. And he said, well, just fake one. Just do it like you were on the air back in the day. And I was like, interesting challenge because I don't know if I can sound like that. And I said, how about later today I'll send you a mocked up version of what I would sound like. And I did it. And surprisingly, it was very easy to do. And according to the gentleman, I nailed it. So that was, I didn't get the job, not because it wasn't a bad air check. It was because they decided to go with a female voiceover person. So I missed it on that point. But to find out you could still do the old thing in the relevant reasons that Mike just said, maybe there's some people out there that have an opportunity that are older that can still go back and plug into that zeitgeist that used to be boss radio back in the 70s.
It's like riding a bike, right, Mitch? I mean, you did radio for too long. Like I'm surprised that you were surprised that you thought you maybe couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, it was like riding a bike without the seat. It was literally that painful. No, it wasn't. It was fun. And when you're at this age, one of the tough things about being an older radio person, I think Mike could tune in on this, is finding out you can still do something that you were good at back in the day. Can you still do it? Can you still sound like the young guy? And I had people tell me, sounds just like you just, got out of the air chair at WFIL, and that's the way it sounds. So enough about me, but finding out you still have the chops. That's an interesting thing, and I think, Mike, you got it in the back of your head that, yes, you're a real estate agent that'll probably pay a lot more dividends to you, knowing that if something happens in the radio, you could still go back to it and be just as good as you were when you left it.
Well, yeah, here's hoping. The idea that I'm doing this, although it's not what I've done before as a music DJ, I'm a presenter of news and other elements on an NPR-based program is something totally different. I like stretching. I like trying different things. Way back in the day, I was a play-by-play sports announcer. And I loved doing that, and I would love a chance to do that again. So, being on air is a special vocation. There's just no question about it. And to be able to have that opportunity again, sure, yeah. And if I could sell a house or two along the way, that'd be great too.
Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Well, I mean, for many years I've been a video production guy, and that business unfortunately is drying up. So now I'm thinking, maybe I could go back into radio in my semi-retirement and do that again. But the idea that you can step back into those shoes is very interesting, and the idea to stretch yourself by doing something that you haven't done or you weren't sure you could do. Just so people that don't understand what it's like to be a disc jockey, most music radio guys, you talk 10 seconds at a time over the intro, the outro of a song. You want to keep the music going, and you want to say things that are relevant to the area you're in or the music you're playing, and be entertaining and fun, and reassure people that everything's okay. That's the main job of a radio disc jockey. When I came back to radio at the insistence of a number of people, yourself included, to do the morning show at the local Big Top 40 station, which Mike was one of the programmers at, it was shocking for me to consider it, because I first said no, because I didn't want to find out that I can't do something that I used to be really good at. And when I sat down to do the morning show, I had to consider what's different about doing the morning show at a radio station where I used to do nights, an afternoon drive where things were very fast-paced and upbeat, and I only talked for those short periods of time. Morning show, the dynamics are completely different, and when I did it, I was a bit nervous about it, but what was supposed to have been like a 3-week, 2-month fill-in for somebody else turned into a full-time job, because I took to it like a duck to water, so to speak. And it was fun, and then it wasn't, because I was like trying to be my radio guy again, personality, and at the same time I was part owner of a ad agency in town. And my partners were they thought it was kind of cool that their partner was on the air in the morning at the local station. But at the same time, the stuff that I had to do in my other job, and Mike, you might want to take notice of this, affected, like we'd be in a meeting with the big bank in town that we were pitching for work, and one of the bank vice presidents would say, "Are you the same Mitch Hill that does mornings at WSDW? You said something this morning that I thought was, my partners are staring daggers at me." And I'm like, well, the opinion expressed, that's an act. That's not me. That's not. And then, of course, my partner says, "No, that's him. That's exactly what he's like. So be ready for it." If they hired us, which was good, but it was a nice sidetrack, which lasted for, I guess, about 3 years, didn't it? It was an interesting thing to do, and I got out of it. Now I miss it, because, as Mike said, when you have radio as a career in your system and you embrace it and you do it well, it's like being a singer or a guitarist or whatever. It's in your blood. You can't get it out of there, and it's very tough to get rid of it. Which takes me back to a question I want to ask you, Mike.
Yep.
What got you into broadcasting in the first place? What was it that encouraged you to be a radio personality, whether it's a disc jockey or a programmer or some other job?
It was quite a moment. It was really a moment, Mitch, and it was something I'll never forget. I was in 8th grade, and my good middle school friend by the name of Wayne Hepler invited me to go to see his older brother play a basketball game at Mount Pleasant High School. So, we found ourselves walking into the gym and sat across from the benches. And as I looked across center court over to the benches, right in the middle was this beautiful table that had a banner on it, perfectly straight, lovely, no creases. And on top of it was this little bit of broadcast equipment, a couple of different microphones. Back then we had the big orange Nerf ball pop filters. And I came to learn that that was the high school radio station. And it was as if the heavens opened up and the light poured down on it and me at the same time. I was just thrilled. And I never had thought about that at all before, but the idea that that was there and I could step in there as a freshman and do that sort of thing the following year was very exciting to me. All my plans of being an architect went right out the window. and sure, the second day that I was a freshman the following year, I walked into the radio station, and the rest is history.
So it's in your blood. You know, you may be a real estate agent now too, but you're also the voice of Delaware and various other capacities. And you do other things too. Are you allowed to talk about little projects to come along that allow you to incorporate your personality and your visage for? Maybe the video you're working on. You're allowed to talk about that.
That's true. I would think so. Sure. Thank you for that. I've done one project, and another project is now underway for the Delaware Heritage Commission. They've done some video productions. The last one was of the Civil War and Delaware's contributions and participation in the Civil War. That came out a few years ago. And now we're getting ready for the sesquicentennial celebration and Delaware's involvement in the historical times right around 1776. So the chance to be on-air interviewer and a chance to talk to people who are really up to speed on the history of the state of Delaware is very entertaining, very, very thrilling. And again, different set of disciplines in terms of being an on-camera talent as well as
But you're also a go-to guy that if there's let's say the Playhouse is interviewing a personality, for I had a thing come up. I couldn't do it, but they had the captains from Deadliest Catch. And I think Michael Waite ended up doing that. That's the kind of stuff that you'll get a call for. It's like could you come in and do the interview for the audience?
Well, again, here's my phone number, 302-373-2880. Call me. I haven't had very many of those opportunities, but, while I was at WJBR, there were a couple of chances to do things like the let's see, it was the brunch, the wonderful brunch that Meals on Wheels Delaware has each and every year, hosting that. I've hosted a number of great events over the years, and that would occasionally call for a chance to interview somebody in front of other people, and I look forward to those opportunities anytime I get it.
And you ever get this? I get this once in a while. Is I'll go to an event or a party, where there's some dignitaries there, and they all of a sudden, for some reason, they need somebody to make announcements or introduce somebody, and they look around and go, Mitch, could you go up on stage? And it's funny because you kind of, on one hand, you're like, let me prepare for this, but you can snap into that mode, I'll call it a mode, instantaneously. So I'm sure you're one of those guys that can instantly be the guy to introduce the dignitary without any notice at all, just jump up on stage and make it happen.
Well, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. Your instincts kick in, the microphone light goes on, your little on-air light lights up like it does over the back of your right shoulder there, and you're on, and that's it. Yep.
Yeah, it's a fun thing. We've talked about a lot of stuff about the continuum of being in broadcasting as long as your career has lasted, mine to a lesser degree. What advice would you give to somebody today that might be watching this about pursuing being a radio DJ or getting into broadcasting or some type of performance media, including podcasting? What would you say to them today if you could sort of look into them and say, don't do it? Or, yeah, by all means, what would be your advice?
Well, I would say by all means, because, and I do have that opportunity, and I guess I should have mentioned that when you first brought this question up, but I'm also still a member of the WMPH, that's the Mount Pleasant High School radio station. I'm a member of the advisory board for the Brandywine School District. So I still have the opportunity to throw a word in there about that sort of thing. And yes, my advocacy has always been for the students to have as much possibility on the air as possible, because I think that's where people get to get that bug to bite, as we as we say, and can get involved in the business. But to your question, I say yes, you have to be a multi-platform artist at this point in time, and I encourage anybody who wants to do this, whether they're trying to be a online influencer in any of the various platforms, or whether they want to be more video oriented, or if, just the audio only portion and availabilities on this very wide spectrum these days is what appeals to you, go for that as well. But I think that it's a good thing to get involved and get experience in as many of these different platforms as possible. Because again, to go back to a question you asked that I probably didn't answer properly, what is being encouraged by broadcast stations now is that the talent is going to be providing content for the website, is going to be providing content for social media. And that means not just audio, it means audio and video in a lot of cases, or, text content that is typed up and typed up. Listen to that word. Alex is going to get on me for that and sent along to the consumers. So there a number of different ways that you can communicate, and professional content creators are now being called upon to do it each and every way.
And, this is probably a great time to bring Alex into the conversation because Alex has had a taste of radio. I don't know if it was a good experience or a bad experience for him. I'll let him speak for himself. But Alex is primed to be somebody that, first of all, understands the technical aspects of podcasting and broadcasting. Alex is also a regular on a program called Office Hours, where all they talk about is high tech. So I think that if anybody here was qualified to be able to talk about their career and where they could go with it, is Alexander. What is your attraction to the broadcasting world, whether it is where it is or where it's going?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a few things on that. I mean, first of all, I've never actually been a DJ. I went to school for broadcast and graduated, but I never did anything with it. I wanted to be on the radio, but I'm a bit of a unique situation because I quit my tech job. I worked in IT for 15 years, and in my late 30s, when I went back to school full time, I was 36. I'm 41 now. And I went into a 2-year program, graduated from that thinking that, because I was just basically kind of burnt out at tech. I wanted to do something else. And at that point, I had already been podcasting, making podcasts, well over 1,000 episodes of various shows over the years for the last 15 years. And I thought I'd do that as a full-time job and still have the side hustle of doing podcasts. But it didn't work out that way because what was required was basically moving around a lot and working at these small radio stations in these small towns. And I realized it wasn't the right lifestyle for me. I wasn't prepared to do that because I had just bought a home, it was my first home. And I didn't want to sell it. I didn't want to move around a lot. And it wasn't the lifestyle for a guy that was my age. I mean, it was the right lifestyle, I think, for someone just starting their career, 19, 20, 21 years old. But for a guy that's almost 40, it's not going to work so well. And they want to pay me minimum wage. Yeah, that's not going to work either because I literally would not be able to put food on the table. So I ended up getting another job. But I've always been passionate about the broadcast industry. I learned a lot from school and certainly from podcasts. I mean, because for me, that's what's interesting because I get to do what I want. I get to create the shows that I want. I'm not beholden to advertisers or the FTC or what I can and cannot say on these types of shows. So I love creating content my way, and I realize that's pretty selfish. But this whole new medium of the internet to me is fascinating because the internet, broadband internet, has really democratized what we can do. Platforms like YouTube have democratized this whole medium, right? And for better or worse, everyone has a voice. And that, to me, is, I think, where the future is. Now, I'm not saying that radio doesn't have a future. I think it is, and maybe Mike can speak to that. But I'm very curious too about how radio is going to survive, and how do you see it, Mike? I mean, what are the trends that you see? When a lot of big corporations own these radio stations, there's not a lot of independent owners now. And how are those independent owners surviving? What are they doing to make themselves more relevant?
Well, Alex, I think that what they're doing is most of the smaller operators are operating in smaller markets. And with that, they have worked toward localizing, worked on making sure that their product is absolutely super serving the region that is covered by their transmitter umbrella of signal, and not going beyond that. And I think that's important. And with that, they can also augment that with additional platforms, whether it be social media platforms or going to podcasting and the like. So that's how broadcasting is surviving at the smaller operator level. At the larger operators, I think many of them have gone with making sure that everyone is tuned into their app and being able to plug in the various local signals, and they're having some success with that too. I'm listening to sports radio in Philadelphia and hearing people from all over the country, and I literally mean Alabama, Hawaii, and the like, people calling in and chipping into the local product for a couple of reasons. Number one, they want to hear Philadelphia-oriented sports, or they just want to make sure that that their voice is heard as far as their old hometown is concerned. So it's fascinating to see that and hear that, and the idea that you can expand beyond your terrestrial signal to other places across the country, I think has a lot of appeal for all sorts of broadcasters.
Yeah, and do you think are you hearing from radio stations? Do they about podcasts? Do they have opinions on whether podcasting is relevant? Are they packaging up content and putting it out there? Are they putting because I know you can advertise on podcasts, but I don't know if radio stations are really going full force on the podcast thing. Do they see it as a medium that isn't really that important to their business?
No, I don't think that's it. I think they're still trying to work that out. Probably one of the most potential areas for development there would be in the high-profile morning shows, making sure that they record those shows and redevelop them for podcasting and for YouTube and for their online features as well. Just getting back and developing this content for on-demand situations is probably going to be the best chance for growth.
Sorry, I was looking at some of the comments we're getting from some of our listeners that are out there.
Oh,
and,
hi.
Yeah, that's what they're out there. And some of the usual suspects, you'll be happy to hear. Steven Stryker says hi. One of your hangout buddies from the old WMPH days. Mm-hmm. So how do you feel, Mike, for the future of the industry, looking at somebody like Alexander, who's already been very clear to say, I like radio, but I also like the technology and the new ways of democratizing the internet. How do you feel for the future? How do you think things are we headed the right way, or is there going to be a grand slam of some kind and it's going to have to recover from?
I think that terrestrial signals are of value. I think that they may be in a situation where things kind of flip-flop and the internet is more valuable to people on a day-to-day basis. It's more convenient for them. I understand the great fear of a number of broadcasters in that the availability on the dashboard of vehicles is vitally important, and that's going to be quite a struggle. I think there was legislation in Congress here in this last session about making sure that AM radio survives on the dashboard, and we may have to come to that kind of legislative solution to make sure that radio survives, because it is pretty important in that in an emergency situation, power outages and the like, without proper backup, a lot of our cell phone and internet coverage could fail in some critical situations, and terrestrial radio is going to be called upon to be an outlet. Let's just hope that the consumers remember how to turn on our radio in the near future.
So you're saying it's going to take a big disaster, natural disaster or otherwise, to bring radio back? Gee whiz, that's an interesting observation. Maybe not, but I think that's kind of what you're saying, aren't you?
I don't think it's quite that dire, but I think that the leaders, political leaders, will understand the need for this kind of communication device available to us, especially in an emergency. But day to day, yes, it's still a venue that should be available to people for entertainment and for information, not necessarily the critical information that would come in an emergency situation.
Alex?
I don't have any questions.
Oh, you had your arm up there ready to fire that button there.
I'm doing my thing here, Mitch.
Little inside baseball. Sorry about that. So, what's interesting is... If I may, Mitch, I'll ask Alex about your reaction to my statement about talent, about people who want to get involved in this business, being well-versed in the various platforms, and whether it be audio only or mixing video and audio, or have we gotten to the point where people are now getting channeled into specific roles, whether it be strictly tech and strictly talent? Has it come that far, that fast?
I think so. I mean, so here's some observations that I have over the 2 years that I was in broadcast school. A few things, and I don't know if it was different in the past, but a lot of people have weird speech patterns now, and there are weird things in their speech patterns I never noticed 30, 40 years ago when I was younger, because I was a lot older than everybody else in my class. So vocal fry, which is a phenomenon that seems to be a problem now. It's this kind of croaky, froggy sound that comes out of your voice when you have low energy and you talk like this, right? And it doesn't sound good on the radio. And one of the things that I find is that people were not good at taking criticism and feedback from instructors. People are like, you're paying to go to school. They're there to learn. You're there to work on your craft. And people had a very thin skin. They would just, any kind of feedback about their voice, they'd be like, the instructor hates me and they're out to get me. And it's like, people have a very different perspective now. And so that's one thing. And then of course, the other thing too, is that we are now being asked to wear many, many hats. It's not enough to just get in front of a microphone and be interesting. You gotta know social media. You got to manage those platforms. You got to know those platforms inside out. And so that's the other thing. And the thing is, people aren't really being compensated to do all these other roles. And also because the industry has shrunk, that we're now being asked to do a lot more for a lot less, or the same pay, which you could argue, well, that's not really fair, but it is what it is. That's the way the industry is right now. So I don't know going forward how problematic that is going to be for this whole new generation that is getting into radio now, having to do all these other roles and not being compensated. So that's the other thing I'm curious about. But those are my observations from being in broadcast school and just witnessing a whole different generation interact and respond to how the industry is. And of course, the other thing too now is with streaming audio is the audio quality on radio now is not fantastic, and it varies wildly from station to station. And now I think when you have platforms like Apple Music doing lossless audio and Dolby Atmos now and spatial audio and all this stuff where you get this incredible high quality audio, why would I listen to music in my car? It's just a worse experience. And then of course the other thing too is lack of personalities. When I was growing up, CFox was my favorite radio station. It's still a big radio station, but a lot of those personalities have gone away. And the modern personalities to me lack edginess. I want to hear edginess in it. And I want to hear people pushing the limits of what you can do on radio. And I'm just not hearing that anymore. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that one of the things that interests me most is how people express themselves and how it changes from generation to generation. And I think that I like hearing people expressing themselves in modern terms, using modern language on the air. I think that that's important for the audience that you're trying to reach. You have to communicate that way, and that's going to be important. That's why Mitch and I are hoping that yes, we can talk to the audience of our age, and that my hope is that many of these channels that are geared toward younger audiences will have people that sound and think and talk that way. That's the only way that you're going to be able to build an audience, because every audience, every generation can see right through someone trying to be much younger or much older.
Right. You're talking about authenticity. I think you're talking about authenticity and that's
absolutely
something. And in modern education too, in these radio schools, they seem to push that a lot, and they actually encourage people to just. I'm not saying not work on your craft. Of course, your vocal cords are a muscle, and you can get better. But they really encourage people to sound like themselves, to not do this old school radio voice. They really shy away from that now, and I know, and Mitch and I have talked about this too, because Mitch has a bit of that. I love his voice, and I kind of look for that on the radio, but it's definitely that's gone away. Like that, they don't do that anymore.
I wish I could tell you, because I've never thought that I've had that radio voice. I've never had the great pipes that I hear from Mitch and from so many of my idols, for whatever reason. So I have this.
At least you're not doing vocal fracking. You're not doing Frisian fracking. What is the term?
Fry.
I keep
Vocal
forgetting. Fry. You're not fry.
I don't know if my voice is fried or not. It probably sounds like it to me right at the moment.
In fairness to you, I think you have a great sounding voice, but I think to your point too, it's about embracing the individual and their own unique voice, because we don't want radio to sound homogenous. Not everybody needs to have that kind of quote unquote what we think of as the radio quote unquote voice, or as Mitch likes to say, yucking it up, on the radio. It's about embracing individuality.
Yeah, sure, because that's what personality is. And I think that what we're going to find is that broadcasters are probably going to start leaning into looking for those people that are influencers online and seeing if they can develop them as personalities, whether it be on television or on radio. I think that's where talent search is going to go in the future.
Yeah, you were talking just shortly ago about the expectations for compensation, and radio is never a job that you took on to make tons of money, unless you're at the very tippy top of the food chain. If you're Howard Stern, you're at the top of the food chain. But if you're in a major market, you might be doing pretty well. But there's a vast majority of people in broadcasting then and now are making, minimum wage, barely enough to get by on. Not many people in it are doing it for the money. They're doing it because of the passion that they have for it. And as a parallel to doing a podcast, we're not getting a dime for our podcast. By the way, push subscribe. and tell us how much you like us. We're not getting a dime for it. We're doing it for the passion. As long as people want to hear what we have to say, then we're going to continue to do that. And that's a decision that Alex and I made when we started doing this, is that we don't want to trick people into thinking, hey, this is, the Columbia School of Broadcasting. You can become a radio DJ, not affiliated with CBS, whatever. It's not like that then, and it's not like that now. And to be a moneymaker, even on a podcast, you have to have thousands and thousands of subscribers. We've got 96 right now. We're on our way up. We're at 96. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So it's an interesting phenomenon as far as a job. You really got to want to do it. And as a side story, I'll make it really quick, is when I decided I wanted to do something, the thing I did not want to do on a podcast, because I have so many friends in the business, radio business, that are doing it, is that can we do something that doesn't like they're trying to recapture their golden broadcasting days, and they're yakking it up about how, when back in the 70s, can we contribute something to today? And the idea was that maybe there's a few angry disc jockeys out there that don't like the way things are now, that used to have it good back then. And when I sort of floated the idea, Alex raised his hand and said, I want in on this. And I thought it was beautiful, because nothing better than having, the old guy that lived back in the days that still had that radio voice, and the new guy that understood the technology and where to take it. There's a nice little blending there of personalities. I think Alex and I have learned to respect one another, and also like the idea that they have something that the other doesn't, and together we have much more. So it's kind of an interesting mishmash, so to speak. So maybe we're onto something, maybe we're not. But we're kind of trying to suggest, hypothetically, because thought ideas don't cost anything, where radio could go. I mean, what can we do to enhance what broadcasting is all about? And one of the ideas that Alex came up with is, why don't we go back to doing radio plays like they used to? And it doesn't have to be like The Shadow. It could be Chicken Man or Tooth Fairy. There's something that's perfect for broadcasting, because you're using a great theater of the mind. You can build this, huge sound stage that doesn't exist. We don't have to spend millions and millions of dollars like Marvel Comics does when they do a movie. We can use the theater of the mind to build something very interesting. And radio being the great, radio is a delivery method that you do something with it. It's not like TV where it demands your attention and you have to watch it and stop whatever you're doing. With radio, you can drive the car, you can, cook your meal, you can build cabinetry in your garage. You can do something with it, and it sort of occupies that other part of your brain. I still think that's relevant. I think that's a relevant thing for broadcasting.
I think, radio drama has a real possibility with these new platforms. No question about it. I remember back actually in the 1970s when CBS Radio would broadcast new dramas. They had the CBS, what was it called? The Mystery Theater, maybe something of that nature. Yep. And of course, there's probably, hopefully somewhere, large libraries of radio dramas that are still available that could be great podcast material. I also think with maybe a little audio restyling, a TV series like, say, Law and Order would be a perfect audio only kind of vehicle.
Yeah, and I just want to interject too that scripted podcasts are incredibly popular now, both fiction and nonfiction script. In fact, actually, some people have been fortunate enough that have had so much success with their scripted podcasts that that film companies have actually bought their idea and have actually turned it into a live action TV show. So I think there's, radio dramas are a very different thing than we're talking about old school, the way they would do it with a bunch of people in a room. But I think there's absolutely, I don't think the scripted podcasts are all that different, because it's all theater of the mind, right? It's all using your imagination, and you got sound design involved as well. So I think there absolutely is a market for that.
No question. Yep, I think that's great possibilities. It goes back to what do radio platforms, radio people do with this possibility of podcasting? And aside from, like I say, repackaging their live segments so that people could hear them on demand, you get into a situation, and Mitch touched on it very briefly, about having an idea, having an overarching idea for your podcast. It has to be something that's interesting and can carry you through multiple episodes of a podcast, and not just I'm going to get on here and yap away for an hour. I don't see the point in that, and I don't see that being very sticky for an audience.
Yeah, it's compelling content will always work, even if the distribution system changes. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. There's a lot of distribution out there, and we're faced with a lot of different choices that back in the day when radio might be 1 or 2 AM stations, maybe an FM, 3 channels or 4 channels of TV. That was it. And there wasn't social media. There wasn't, the internet the way it is. It's very hard for some people to get their arms around the way it used to be, the way it is now. But in some ways, it's still the same. But in other ways, it's completely changed. And one of those things, and I want to bring it into the conversation right now, that's going to dramatically change all of these things is AI. Mike, do you have any opinions about what AI is doing? The voiceovers, every radio station you listen to now is being run by a computer. Might as well be run by an AI, too. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's one of those things where the operators, the managers, have always wanted more and more control over the content of their platforms. That goes back to you and I, Mitch, saying, "Oh, my program director is absolutely wacky. I'm going to do it my way." Of course I'm going to do my show my way. Come on. But no, that's not what the people who own those radio stations or platforms really want. They want to be able to have that content right down the middle, channeled the way they want it to be, and AI gives them that opportunity.
And that's also one of the reasons why we're losing the personality aspects that Alex was mentioning earlier, is that it's safer. We used to always be told you can't be hurt by what you don't say on the radio. But if you step out there, Mitch, and you do your funny gag, you're going to tend to get somebody a little bit off center and upset. And it's funny. I used to when I was doing mornings, is that inevitably I got away with a lot. It was like screening Blazing Saddles today. It would never fly. It would never fly to do that. I was doing things back then. I listened to it and I kind of cringed. I'm like, ooh, that wouldn't fly today. I'd be definitely canceled. But there's no room for that anymore. We just don't have the room in our sensibilities to be a little too edgy, because there's too many roadblocks to run into. So maybe we're in a pendulum swinging state right now where things are swinging one way and eventually going to go another. But the important thing is that no matter where that pendulum goes, that there's still going to be a Mike Rossi who's ready to step back in and rescue us all with something that's relevant and entertaining and is the new thing in radio. Because there's one thing about radio you can be sure of. If somebody does something that really catches hold one place, it's going to be everywhere. Yep. Have you noticed with radio, there's like a Q station. All of a sudden, there's Q everywhere. There's a G station or a Froggy or a Magic. It's the radio business is a monkey see, monkey do business. So, as what I said to you when you told me that you didn't land that job that we were talking about in the last several weeks. Here's hoping that idea sticks, and that the next radio station wants to put something on the air like that, and it builds from there. And before you know it, I won't have time to talk to Mitch Hill because he's too busy voice tracking for 5 different radio stations across the country. Wouldn't it be a wonderful thing? Now, as long as I get paid more than $20, enough to pay for a Happy Meal or something, that's the difference. Because I used to make some pretty big money in the radio business. That's kind of changed a wee bit. So it's funny to be able to go with the flow. And same thing with voiceover work. getting the small fraction of, because there are more people out there doing stuff. The technology has enabled people to do things that they couldn't do before. It used to cost a lot of money to outfit a studio like this. It doesn't so much anymore. If you have a laptop and a halfway decent microphone, Mike, why don't you pull your microphone into the show? That's a halfway decent microphone. He's ready to go. He can do a podcast right now. So that's the great thing of it. By the way, since I have a chance to do it and I have a birthday tomorrow, we're going to hit 70. I want to remind everybody that I'm doing a fundraiser to raise money to purchase a new Corgi. I don't have the money to do it because of the reasons I just said, is that it doesn't pay what it used to. But if you can find it in your heart to help me get a cute little face like that back in there, you can go on to our YouTube site and find the link, or you can just look into the eyes of that tiny little Corgi who was my pal for so long. Please give until it hurts. And while you're doing that, and I won't belay this shameful fundraising plug, don't forget to smash the subscribe button because we're at 96 right now. Can we get it to 97? I mean, is that too much ask? In fact, make it to 100. That would be a big celebration for us to get it to 100 like this fast. So help us out.
James,
and Alex,
James
how
in
do
the
people
chat,
reach out to us?
James in the chat just donated, so thank you, James.
Oh, James, thank you. You the man. Appreciate that.
Very good.
Yeah, so you can actually scan the QR code on the screen that lets you into Discord. That's our ongoing community that we have been working hard to build. And we got a whole bunch of you already in there, but it'd be good if you haven't actually signed up for Discord to get in there, because that's the best way to continue the conversation after the show ends, because we like to do that 7 days a week. And you can also find us on social media at The Last Angry DJ on all platforms. And you can also send us an email the old-fashioned way. It's hello@thelastangrydj.com. Our website, thelastangrydj.com, is live now. There's not a lot of content on there, but I'm slowly working on building that thing into something decent. So thanks very much for everything.
Oh, thank you, Alex. And don't forget, if you want to enhance my birthday tomorrow, here's how you do it. Let me get a fuzzy buddy like that, and that's enough for... Whoop. See, it just won't go away. I want to thank Mike Rossi for joining us here. What a great thing. I know we talk a lot about radio in and around our area, but I think it's a very relevant thing, and it can be duplicated pretty much anywhere in the country, especially we're a top 75 market. I didn't realize that we're like number 75 as of today, something like that. It used to be like 110, some crazy number. So we appreciate Mike coming on and sharing with us. You have a lot of friends on social media. If you want to check out on YouTube, you can check it out, like Alex was saying. But what a great conversation. Next week, we're going to be talking to my therapist, which should be very interesting, exposing certain things. It's really my friend, but I call her my therapist. Lois Nakami will be here. Lois is also throwing a party for me tomorrow, so that should be very interesting. But we're going to talk a little bit about personality and how it affects you and what it's like to be a on-air personality and not, and what kind of roadblocks you might run into. It's a very complicated thing when you have a larger-than-life personality that you got to juggle along with your on-air. So that should be an interesting show. As always, we record live on Sundays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. If you'd like to join us and make your comments, we appreciate that. And as Alex said, this will be converted into audio podcast, all in the usual suspects. Great stuff to listen to at any time, whether you're driving a car or whatever, just like radio. It's the fun thing to do. And we'll continue to do this as long as it's fun and as long as we get subscribers. So, Mike, thank you so very much for being here. It was a pleasure to have you. Go out and sell a couple of those $1 million houses. He's the man to talk to if you want to get a listing.
Yeah. Okay, $1 million, sure. That's fine, and right down the street in my neighborhood too. Please, yeah, that'd be great. And love to see you. My alarm goes off at 2:45 tomorrow morning, so I can be in Dover at 4:30 to host Delaware Public Media on WDDE 91.1. So there you go. Alex, great meeting with you this afternoon and talking to you,
too.
Mitch,
Thanks,
as always. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Don't forget to join us next week when we have Lois on. It should be fun, very revealing. She'll probably tell things about me that I don't even know and maybe don't care about, but who knows. I'll hit 70, and that's a big roadblock for me. So, ciao. Take care of yourselves.